We know that the immune system is a major protective system of our body. And due to its importance in the body, it can be compared to the army of the country. Just as the army is supposed to protect the country from foreign entities, immune system is supposed to protect our body from foreign invading pathogens. And the key player in this army of our body are the leukocytes, or white blood cells, which acts as a competent soldier to protect their target areas from potential threats or enemies that can be any harmful or sometimes harmless entities, like in case of hypersensitivity. Among these leukocytes, many are famous for their role, but those cells that make up the adaptive part of our immune system are lymphocytes. Mainly b-lymphocytes and T-lymphocytes got fame in this category. And we know that b-lymphocytes play a role in antigen recognition, as its receptors that are called BCRs have ability to directly attach with the invading microbes depending on the compatibility between antigen binding site of BCRs and that of invading pathogens antigenic peptide. On the other hand, T-cells, or T-lymphocytes, make up a large part of adaptive immunity and also play a role in antigen recognition, with the help of specific receptors found on the surface of T-lymphocytes, called TCRs. But these TCRs, unlike BCRs, do not bind with the incoming antigen separately, but they need a complex of antigen with another important molecule named MHC, or major histocompatibility complex, for their binding. This MHC is found on almost all nucleated cells, specifically on antigen-presenting cells. And this MHC molecule bonds with the antigenic peptide at their binding groove, and in this way, make a complex that we call MHC antigen complex. This complex is then detected by TCRs for taking further action against that entrapped antigen over self-MHC molecule. I have tried to explain it in a simple possible way, but if you want to learn in detail about MHC, or about MHC antigen TCR complex model, then you can have a better look of our video under title MHC and Antigen Presentation. You will get detailed knowledge about MHC and how it helps play role in antigen recognition by T-cell receptors. So now, coming back to our topic, where our focus will be particularly on T-cells development and selection. So before going into details of this process, first let's briefly summarize the complete process that we are going to discuss in this video. We know that all blood cells arise from the bone marrow. And the progenitor cells for all these blood cells are normally called hematopoietic stem cells. These cells then further give rise to different blood cells lineages, mainly myeloid lineage and lymphoid lineage cells. Myeloid lineage then produce all other type of blood cells, including erythrocytes, thrombocytes, and leukocytes, except lymphocytes, because lymphocytes are produced by the lymphoid lineage cells. And we know, here our concern is with T-lymphocytes. And, from this discussion, we get to know that the precursor cells that are required for the biosynthesis of T-lymphocytes are produced within bone marrow. Although, their production site is mainly bone marrow, but the T-lymphocytes are mainly generated and developed in a very important primary lymphatic organ, that is known as thymus. And this T-cell development within the thymus is a multi-step process that we will look in detail in this video. During this development, T-cell selection that also takes place within thymus, and so is named as thymic selection of T-cells, continues side by side, before the release of T-cells in the circulation. But before going into details of this T-cell development and selection, first we will have a brief look on the summary of entire process. So first of all, the immature precursor cells for T-lymphocytes, that are called pre-thymocytes, after producing within bone marrow, or before birth, in fetal liver as well. These pre-thymocytes start to migrate towards thymus, which is the site of maturation for T-lymphocytes. And that is the reason why these cells are called T-lymphocytes. So, once these pre-thymocytes enter the thymus, the thymic stromal cells, or we name them epithelial cells of thymus, start producing various chemical signals. And under the influence of these chemical signals, T-cells starts rearranging their genetic makeup and start to produce antigen surface markers or surface proteins. These surface proteins are the checkpoints that determine the completion of each step of T-cell development. At the level of these precursor cells, these cells haven't decided their fate yet, or they haven't chosen any certain subset of T-lymphocytes to develop into. But at later stages, by development of certain surface protein markers, pre-thymocytes gets mature and give rise to the thymocytes. Until that stage, they have decided to follow certain subset of T-lymphocytes that are mainly CD8 plus T cells, that simply forms the cytotoxic cells, which play role in cell-mediated immunity. Or CD4 plus T cells, that are the helper T cells, and as name shows, they provide help for pathogen killing to other cells. And some of these T-lymphocytes also develop into regulatory T cells, that help regulate the components of the immune system. At the stage when thymocytes have developed both surface markers, and haven't chosen particular subset, there they go through the positive and negative selection, where they are selected on the basis of interaction with the self-MHC molecules that we will discuss in detail later in this video. After this selection, and proper development of thymocytes into mature T cells of particular lineage, they are then ultimately released into the circulation as naive T cells. So, this was a brief summary of the entire process of T-cell development and selection. And we are going to discuss each and every step in detail in this video. So without any delay, let's get started.
Have you ever heard of video books? sqadia.com is delighted to present video books, medical books, that have been tailored into a series of videos. sqadia.com videos are presented in the same order as the book's chapters. Explore now and make your learning easy.